At my wedding, my fiancé's ex-boyfriend showed intimate photos of them together. The guests were shocked and I was furious. She said, "Eric's just being immature. Do you really need to lose your cool?" Couldn't believe it. Her ex ruined my wedding, and I'm not allowed to be mad? With her forgiving attitude, the ex even had the nerve to hit me, saying, "A mute like you dares to marry Tina? Fine, I won't marry her. Even so, don't think you'll be happy either." During my wedding, a big screen suddenly started showing photos of my fiancée and her ex. The MC quickly noticed, but not before all the guests saw them. Standing on the stage, I looked over to where Eric was sitting. He was wearing a white suit, looking just like the groom. Fuming, I stormed over and slapped him. Tina pushed me aside, saying, "Eric's just being immature. Why are you so angry?" I nearly fell over, looking at Tina in disbelief. Eric held his swollen cheek, tears in his eyes. "Tina, I wish you happiness. I'll live on even without you." He ran off, heartbroken. Tina instinctively started to follow him. "Tina," I called out, my voice shaky. The wedding had just begun, and she was going to leave me in front of everyone? Her footsteps hesitated, realizing the situation, but she paused for just a moment, turned back to me and said, "Let's push the wedding back half an hour. I'll be right back." I watched her leave. My parents came to comfort me, telling me to be patient. But I knew there was no way Tina would be back in half an hour, and sure enough, she wasn't back after an hour. I became the center of gossip. "Sorry, everyone, today's wedding is now a birthday party. It's my 25th birthday, enjoy the cake. I'll refund the gifts later. Hope you enjoy." I tried to save face for both families. After sending off the guests, Tina's mom left without a word to me. My parents were furious, and I could only try to calm them down. After dropping them at their hotel, I was exhausted and couldn't resist video calling Tina. It wasn't until the 6th try that she answered, and the screen showed Eric. "Tina, go back. The wedding must be a mess. Ben will be angry. He won't, he'll patiently wait for me." Eric laughed. "He really is wrapped around your finger." My heart ached, and I couldn't listen to them anymore, so I quickly hung up. Half an hour later, Tina called back, but only with a voice call I didn't answer. That night, I stayed with my parents at the hotel. Tina called countless times after midnight, but I left it on silent. The next morning, my parents looked at me worriedly. I forced a smile. "Mom, Dad, you guys go back. I'll take care of myself." My dad was heartbroken. "You've been with her for 3 years, you even got the marriage certificate." His tone was full of resentment toward Tina. "Dad, I'm sorry about the wedding. I'll get divorced from Tina." My parents, living abroad due to work, came back specifically for my wedding. Instead, they saw their son become a joke. They were open-minded people, and seeing Tina hurt me so much, they supported my decision. But they wanted to stay with me in case I was too sad, and it took a lot of convincing to get them to leave. Parents love us more than life itself. I had no reason to show them my wounds and make them hurt with me. Back home from the airport, Tina was waiting. Her hair was wet, wearing a dress, looking like she just showered and changed clothes. "Ben, this is for you." She handed me a new watch. I stared at her silently. She'd done it before, upset me and then gave me something like hitting someone and then giving a sweet treat. I used to like her and let her charm me, but from last night, everything changed. "It's too expensive, I can't take it." Tina shrugged, smiling. "We're married now, what's mine is yours. How come you can't take it?" I stared at her intently. She finally gave in. "I'm sorry, hubby. I was wrong yesterday. You know, Eric, we were together for 6 years. He can't take me getting married now. I was afraid he'd do something foolish. So you left me behind?" I demanded. Tina, annoyed, frowned. I explained it. "What more do you want?" My heart sank deeper. "I need an apology." "For what?" "The big screen yesterday, that was Eric's doing, right? Trying to embarrass me on purpose. He provided those photos. He hurt me. Doesn't he owe me an apology?" Looking irritated, Tina said, "Ben, can't you just let it go?" I said Eric was just being immature. My heart shattered. "There's some stuff at work. Can't go on our honeymoon today. We'll talk about it later." Tina adjusted her hair and walked out. I didn't even get to bring up the divorce. Tina was my senior. We met 3 years ago at an alumni event introduced by school leaders, and she was the one who pursued me. I thought she was caring then, and we naturally got together. Later on, while browsing school forums, I found out Tina and Eric were once the talk of the school. They got together in their first year and dated through graduation and 2 years beyond, then broke up suddenly due to personality differences. 6 years is indeed a long time, but that can't be Tina's way out of the wedding. I snapped back to reality and, without thinking, called Tina's assistant, Linda. I asked, "Is there something going on at the company?" Linda was confused. "No, Tina planned everything in advance to go on a honeymoon with you." "Okay, got it. Thanks." I packed my things, moved back to my place, and after pulling myself together, went back to school to work on some modeling. I turned off my phone in the meantime. That evening, as I was leaving work, Tina showed up at my door, looking annoyed. "Ben, can you stop being so dramatic?" I just looked at her calmly. "Take some time to get the divorce papers." Tina reacted as if she'd heard a joke. "Ben, you're an out-of-towner with a disability. Do you really think you'll do better without me?" Her eyes landed on the hearing device behind my ear. I went deaf at 6 from a fever due to middle ear infection and have relied on a cochlear implant to hear since. Tina knew about my situation from day one. She used to praise my bravery and sunny disposition. Now, she used my shortcomings against me. I was utterly disappointed. She confidently proclaimed, "Come on back with me, and we'll just say you threw a tantrum. As for the wedding, I'll make it up to you." Her voice dripped with patronizing charity, as if I was lucky to be with her. "I mean it. I'm not just acting up," I said sincerely. But Tina didn't believe me. She looked at me from head to toe. "Did you get your clothes from the supermarket? Over our 3 years together, I've never seen you wear designer brands or carry anything but a canvas bag. Even at our wedding, your parents dressed plainly. With that background and your personal challenges, splitting up isn't a tantrum, is it?" As she talked, I couldn't help but humor myself with a laugh. I moved with my parents to Canada when I was young, where people care more about comfort than brands. That mindset stuck, so supermarket finds are often enough for me. And canvas bags? They're simple, eco-friendly, and practical. I never imagined Tina would see my lifestyle as a reflection of my family background. It's honestly amusing. Since when did wealth demand glitz and glam? Tomorrow at 9, meet me at the company so we can head to the civil office. Our worlds didn't see eye to eye, so I decided not to explain more, just opened the door and went inside. As Tina tried to follow, I quickly slammed it shut, and it hit her nose. Outside, she shouted in frustration, "Ben, you're being unreasonable. I gave you a way to save face and you're still acting up?" Leaning against the door, I listened to her outburst calmly. Just a month ago, we were poring over maps to plan our honeymoon, and now here we were, falling apart like this. My phone pinged. An Instagram friend request from Eric popped up. Once I accepted, he messaged me right away. "Hey, I'm Eric, you know me." Before I could reply, he sent me 6 photos. The first 3 from today showing Tina in the kitchen cooking noodles. The last 3 from our wedding day, with Tina sitting by the bed bringing him water. Felt like watching maggots crawl. Fighting off disgust, I replied, "Never seen someone so brazen about wrecking a marriage." Eric sent a cute emoji. Tina didn't blame me. She said, "You love her a lot. Are you really that lost without her?" I answered, "This is between us." Eric smugly replied, "Want me to call her over with one phone call?" As expected, her phone rang from outside. She whispered something and then stopped knocking, soon driving away. I looked out to see her car disappearing. 15 minutes later, Eric texted a photo showing Tina getting out of her car, approaching him. "We dated for 6 years with a lot of good memories. You still think you can hold onto her heart?" He later tweeted, "Even after 6 years, the feeling remains." Attached was a picture of a watch that Tina had gifted me, left by me on the coffee table, unwanted. A wave of revulsion hit, and I quickly blocked both Eric and Tina on Instagram. The next day, I went to see Tina at her office. The receptionist gave me a look full of pity, probably knowing what happened at the wedding. But I was unfazed. I called Tina, but she didn't answer, so I had Linda pass on the message that I was in the lobby waiting. 2 hours later, Tina sluggishly came down, still looking annoyed. "Ben, you're making a scene. This is getting embarrassing. I don't want to talk. Let's get a divorce." My words were firm, a few folks around heard it. Probably feeling the pressure, Tina's face fell. "Fine, divorce it is." I drove us to the civil office, not looking at her once in the car. The atmosphere was tense. She finally understood I was serious and softened. "Babe, I know I made a mistake. Can't you give me another chance?" She tried to hold my hand, but I pulled away. She had naturally captivating eyes, now looking at me with a hint of hurt. I'd spent 3 years not just enjoying her gaze but planning a future with her. Now all I felt was heartbreak. I avoided looking at her. At a red light, her phone rang. It was Eric, saying something that made her tense, glancing over at me instinctively. At that moment, we got rear-ended by another car. Thankfully, just a jolt. Eric and I got out at the same time, only to be met by 2 burly guys glaring at us. Tina opened the car door and got out. I thought she'd go talk to them, but instead, she turned to me and said, "Eric slipped at home. I need to go check on him. You handle these guys, then drive home." She looked a bit worried, her brows slightly furrowed, and added, "Sweetie, don't be mad. You know I truly love you." Then she tried to give me a calming kiss, but I coldly dodged it. She seemed stunned and gave me an annoyed look before hurriedly running to a bus that was about to leave. It was a blazing summer day, but my heart felt like ice. Seeing I was alone, the guys behind us tried to blackmail me for 50,000 yuan. Even though they were the ones who hit us, my car was perfectly fine, while their front light was broken and the bumper was hanging off. I was furious at how unreasonable they were and suggested we call the police. Unexpectedly, one of them, a bald guy, pulled out a big wrench from under his seat and swung it at me. I quickly dodged, but another guy got out of the car and pushed me to the ground. Suddenly, the wrench landed on my back. Intense pain consumed me, and everything started to blur. The attackers initially wanted to extort money, but seeing me collapsed, they panicked and drove away. A kind passerby called 911 and reported the assault. At the hospital, I was told my condition was critical and needed immediate hospitalization. The doctor explained in detail, "Your situation is quite serious. If you want to keep your health, you need to be admitted right away." I made up my mind, "Please arrange the surgery, doc." On the 4th day in the hospital, I ran into Tina's assistant, Jean. His mom needed surgery for a fibroid tumor. That evening, Tina rushed to see me, and she brought Eric too. "Ben," she said, looking guilty as she stood by my bed. "I'm sorry, if only I hadn't left." I coldly interrupted, "Don't worry. Even without this incident, I would have chosen surgery." Tina's face immediately fell. Eric couldn't stand it and chimed in, "Ben, without a hearing aid, you're like a mute. You should be grateful for having someone as wonderful as Tina." I sneered and raised an eyebrow at Eric. "Divorcing Tina means you can move up, right? Now you're just playing pitiful?" Eric's face turned pale and he stayed quiet. Tina composed herself and said to me, "Ben, I brought Eric to apologize." "Eric?" With reluctance, Eric mumbled, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have ruined your wedding. It was all my fault." I watched their act with interest. Earlier today, I had a chat with Jean and found out that Tina had been traveling with Eric for work. Word was, Tina made Eric her chief secretary. "Tina," I said, "I just want a decent divorce. You're the CEO of a company. If I were to tell journalists things I shouldn't, it might hurt your image as a businesswoman." Tina didn't expect me to say this. A hint of disdain crossed her face. "Fine, we'll divorce. Just don't regret it later." I smiled faintly. "I won't regret it." The next morning, I couldn't wait to meet Tina at the Civil Affairs office. After the paperwork, I felt so much lighter. Eric got out of the car to greet newly divorced Tina, and she seemed to be in a good mood. As we parted, Tina remarked, "Let's see how you get by without me." Once my health returned, I threw myself back into work. The math modeling project for the reservoir I led was wrapping up, and the government was starting the bidding process. Several bidding companies asked to meet me, hoping to get data on the reservoir construction. Ben, there's a company that wants to meet. When are you available? My assistant Mike asked. Turns out the company was founded by Tina. I never thought they'd be part of the bidding. To save everyone's time, I instructed Mike to arrange a joint meeting for all companies involved in the bid, and not to accept any private appointments. The meeting was scheduled at the school's office building. By the time I arrived, all the company reps were there. The reservoir was a big project, with an estimated government cost of around 4.5 billion yuan. Projects like this not only bring in significant profits, but also boost the company's reputation. So it's no wonder all the top execs showed up. Ben, Eric and Tina were sitting together in the front row. Seeing me, they sneered, "This isn't your place." Tina assumed I was there to cause trouble. She got up, warning, "Ben, we're divorced. Don't mess this up for me." I chuckled, "Tina, it's been 2 months, and you're still so full of yourself." Tina eyed me warily. Mike stepped in. "Tina, please take your seat. Ben will brief everyone together. No private meetings." Tina stepped back confused. Mike introduced me. "Hello everyone, this is my PhD advisor, Ben. He's the lead engineer for the reservoir project's math modeling, and he'll share the relevant data with you." Tina and Eric's faces changed instantly. As their shocked gazes bore into me, I went to the podium and began my presentation. After the meeting, Tina hurried over. "You're the lead engineer for the modeling? At your age?" I calmly responded, "Didn't you know about prodigies, Tina? My dad's a legend in the math world, and my mom's famed in architecture. I grew up surrounded by this and fell in love with math as a kid. I leapfrogged grades straight to my PhD, graduated in Canada, and returned to take my parents' advice to teach at a university back home as a doctoral advisor and take on math modeling projects. Maybe my deep dive into math blinded me to the truth. Tina was my first love, and I had zero experience in dating. I didn't notice how distant she was. She never asked about my background, never cared about my work, or introduced me to her social world. Looking back, the sweetness we had now seems cold and indifferent. Good thing we're done. I turned around and walked away. I could hear Eric questioning me from behind. Definitely acting. He's only 25, right? Younger than us by a few years. Who's he trying to fool? The school leadership invited me to dinner to celebrate the successful completion of my work. Coincidentally, I ran into Tina. She was seeing off a group of elite people and walked over to say hi when she saw the school leaders, looking surprised when she recognized me. The school leader who introduced Tina and me was there too. As soon as Tina sat down at the table, he started talking. "Tina, I know Ben is excellent, that's why I introduced him to you. You two dated for 3 years and finally got together. I was happy for you. I didn't expect you'd get confused at the wedding. Do you know he was actually hired as a high-salary doctoral lecturer by our school?" Tina looked stunned. "I thought he was just an exchange student because he's so young." The school leader frowned. "Who said he was an exchange student? He's a modeling expert in the math department and has led the development of several projects. He could live off his patents for several lifetimes. His parents are both renowned professors." Tina looked bewildered. I dropped my head with a self-deprecating smile. Tina must have thought I was at a disadvantage academically and financially, mistaking me for a poor exchange student because of my plain dressing. "Mr. Gao, Tina and I are done. Let's not bring up the past." When the gathering ended, Tina insisted on dropping me home. I politely declined and flagged down a cab instead. But when I got home, Tina was already there, waiting by my door. "Hey, honey," she greeted, like she'd forgotten we were divorced. I looked at her calmly, a mocking smile on my face. "Tina, we're divorced." Tina reached out to hold my hand, but I dodged. Her hand froze mid-air. "Honey, I regret it. I couldn't stop thinking about you these past 2 months. Can't we get back together?" I found it amusing. When we divorced, she said I'd regret it. But it's clear now she's the one with regrets. Whether it's genuine or ulterior, I can't and don't care to tell anymore. "Sorry, I'm not interested in getting back." I flat out rejected her. Over the next few days, Tina kept showing up in my life. When I was in the lab doing experiments, she'd wait outside with a bouquet. During my lectures, she'd sit like a dazed student in class. She'd even show up at my door in the morning with breakfast. Her harassment was incredibly annoying. When Tina showed up again, I laid it out clearly. I'm not interfering with the bidding. It's all up to Fuyang Company's capabilities. Tina froze. Ben, I'm truly regretting, it has nothing to do with the bidding. I stayed silent for a moment. When I looked her in the eye again, I spoke calmly yet firmly, but I no longer love you. Tina's face fell and she didn't come back that day. But that night, I got a call from an unknown number. Eric was sobbing, asking me to pick Tina up from a bar. I found it absurd and hung up. The next day, Eric came to school to find me. Ben, do you know how much effort Tina put into this project? How many nights she stayed up working? Are you okay with seeing her efforts go to waste? You've got the wrong guy. I'm just in charge of modeling. Bidding is not my department. Eric pressed, we know who you really are. With your influence, you could make Tina's company win the bid with just one word. You love Tina so much, and now you won't even help with this little thing? I chuckled, things change. After how Tina's treated me, you think I still love her. Eric's breath caught. Tina liked you after all. Can't you help her for the sake of what you had? I really can't. Just as it was time for my class, I turned and left. Eric, at wit's end, yelled, Ben, if you don't help, I'll make you regret it. I paused, looked back at Eric, her face twisted with anger. I smiled slightly. If they want to cause me trouble, I'll preempt them. Before I entered the classroom, I posted Eric's provocative messages online, along with a photo of him and Tina. I acted quickly, preventing Eric's rumors from spreading and publicly shaming him and Tina. With this happening, Fuyang's bidding eligibility might not hold up. Time flew and the school's anniversary celebration was coming up. I went to the mall and bought some nice clothes as per Mike's invite. On the day, I wore a formal white suit, drinking and chatting with alumni. The figure approached me. Tina gave me a deep look. Ben, you look handsome. I raised an eyebrow, thanks for the compliment. I know I'm not bad looking, just never really focused on dressing up or makeup. Tina's face fell a bit. About the rumors, it was just Eric's doing. I didn't know anything beforehand. I shrugged. No worries, I made sure to hit back. Eric had posted on the school forum, claiming I left my fiancée of 3 years for fame and used her for money. I countered by revealing the wedding sabotage and Tina's infidelity. My assistant Mike followed up, showcasing my success story, proving I was already accomplished before meeting Tina, with millions in the bank, never needing to spend her money. I had evidence, even photos of them at a hotel when I was hospitalized. This effectively shut them up. Tina was full of remorse. Ben, is there really no chance for us? Feigning surprise, I replied, weren't you in a deep relationship with Eric for 6 years? Tina's face twisted in pain. I'm sorry, Ben. Please, give me another chance? Ben, come here. I want to introduce you to this brilliant student. The school leader who introduced us walked over excitedly. I seized the chance to follow and meet the star student. She was a young girl, with deep eyes and features full of youthful maturity. It's you? I said in surprise. Ben. Someone called out excitedly. The school leaders looked at me, puzzled. Ben, do you know Linda? I smiled at Linda. We actually met when we were teenagers. My parents thought the math curriculum in Canada was slow, so they sent me to a tutoring class during holidays. We met there and saw each other again at the International Mathematical Olympiad. Later, I got busy with my PhD and various projects, and we lost touch. Linda was way more excited than me. She came up and gave me a big hug. So great to see you again. I was pretty pleased too. The truth is, the school leaders weren't wrong. Linda was a true math genius. We were having a great time, chatting and laughing. Meanwhile, Tina stood off to the side, looking upset. But no one paid her any mind. After her whole drama with Eric got posted on the forum by me, her reputation took a nosedive. Even the teachers who were once proud of her didn't want to acknowledge her. The school leaders were part of that crowd too. Tina seemed like she wanted to join in the conversation, but we were discussing math-related stuff, and she couldn't really contribute. Before long, Eric showed up to find her, and she walked away with a stony face. When the event was over, Linda wasn't ready to say goodbye. She grabbed my Instagram and phone number, asking repeatedly, "Ben, you're not going to lose touch with me again, right?" I shook my head. "I'm working at University now, and I've signed a contract. I'm not leaving for at least 5 years." Linda got so excited she wanted to hug me again. I took a step back. Her enthusiasm was a bit much for me. She noticed and gave me an apologetic smile. "See you tomorrow then." I later found out Linda applied to teach at University A. She became my colleague. She even rented the apartment across from mine, becoming my neighbor. I'm not great at cooking, and she happily took on the task, making meals for me every day. We were pretty much inseparable except for work. I'm not clueless. I understood how she felt. But I had just come out of a relationship and didn't want to jump into another one so soon. Luckily, Linda didn't push it. She just discussed math problems with me daily. I thought this life was pretty awesome. But Tina just wouldn't go away. Her company lost the chance to bid on the dam project. It hit her hard. I heard from colleagues she'd been drinking at bars for weeks and broke up with Eric. I'm a no-nonsense kind of guy. Once divorced, her business was no concern of mine. I just focused on my own research. But calm on the surface, life was anything but beneath the surface. The incident happened when I was leaving the elevator as usual. Suddenly, a woman in a gray jacket lunged at me with a long knife. I instinctively dodged back, trying to maneuver in the tight elevator space. "It's all your fault, you took my spot." I recognized her. She was a fellow PhD from abroad, also hired with me. She studied at MIT and worked on math modeling here at University A. The school leaders said her imagination was lacking for modeling work. "Idiot, just die already." She went for me again. This time, she got my arm, and blood started pouring out. I shouted for help, but no one was around. Just as her third swing aimed for my head, a woman jumped in and pushed her aside. "Ben, run," she yelled. I stood there, stunned. The attacker, eyes wild, started wrestling with Tina. Then I saw the cleaning lady appear at the elevator door. I rushed over, grabbed her mop, and hit the attacker. The attacker turned around, eyes blazing red with fury, as if she wanted to devour me. Tina clung to her tightly, preventing her from getting to me again. Then came the sickening sound of a knife sinking into Tina's abdomen. In an instant, blood dripped from Tina's mouth. But she still held on tight, looking at me, and she actually smiled. I froze with horror, almost forgetting the danger. Thankfully, the campus security arrived, halting the attacker's madness. While waiting for the ambulance, I pressed on Tina's wound. "Tina, don't die." She weakly gripped my hand, her eyes locked onto mine. "Ben, can you forgive me?" I kept a straight face. "You have to stay alive for me to even consider forgiving you." Tina was rushed to the hospital for emergency care. The fellow PhD was taken by the police. Linda arrived while I was standing outside the operating room, covered in blood. "Your arm," she pointed out. I glanced at my bandaged arm. "It's fine. It's already been cleaned and stitched." Linda's eyes were full of concern, focused both on me and the illuminated operating room sign. After an exhausting 5 hours, the doctor came out. "The patient's survival spirit is strong. As long as she gets through the next 24 hours, she'll be okay." Linda and I both breathed a sigh of relief. We arranged for a caregiver and were about to leave when Eric and Ben arrived. Eric rushed up, trying to slap me, but Linda grabbed his wrist, stopping him. Eric was furious, shouting, "Haven't you hurt Tina enough? She almost died for you, and you just want to walk away? It doesn't work that way in this world." I looked at the raging Eric coldly, signaling Linda to leave with me. Linda let go of Eric and followed me quickly. On the way back, she seemed to want to say something but didn't. "You want to ask if I'll go back to Tina because she saved my life?" I guessed. Linda nodded, looking at me warmly. I shook my head firmly. "No, I don't believe in repaying life-saving debts by sacrificing your own happiness. There are many ways to show gratitude. I won't choose one that makes me uncomfortable." When I got home, Linda ran the water so I could wash up. My arm was basically useless, so she ended up doing most of the work for me. Her face was red the whole time. It was kinda cute. Those 24 hours were tough. When we heard that Tina was awake, Linda and I went to the hospital to see her. Seeing the two of us together, Tina's face went even paler. I walked over to her bed, looked down and said, "Tina, you need to get better quick so you can manage Fuyang." She thought I was showing concern and her eyes brightened up. I continued, "Don't even think about cashing in on this favor. I'll just look down on you if you do." That shut down Tina's hopes completely. "This time you saved me, so consider it making up for all the past hurts. We're even now." Hating someone takes a psychological toll. I don't want to waste energy on someone who's not worth it. The moment you walk into Fuyang, I'll forgive you. Tina seemed glum, listening powerlessly, not saying anything. After I made my point clear, Linda and I left together. Half a month later, Tina was discharged, and I went to pick her up. She was still living in the apartment we had set up for our marriage, where nothing had changed, not even the action figures I'd bought, still in their spots. The watch was still there on the coffee table. Seeing where I was looking, Tina remembered something and quickly explained, "The one given to Eric is a knockoff. It's not the same as this one." I smiled at her calmly. "Let's not bring up the past." Tina swallowed her words, looking pale as she sat on the couch, still with the cushions I'd bought. She picked one up and placed it on her lap in silence. "I had arranged for a housekeeper for her. You're not completely healed yet. Take it easy and rest at home." Once the housekeeper arrived, I got ready to leave. Tina stood up and called out to me, "Ben, you know, right?" I turned to look at her. "I know. That PhD student was all stuck up since he got to university, feeling frustrated. Eric found out and, under her provocation, he blamed everything on me. He tried to kill me after she manipulated him and drugged him." Tina nodded without any expression. "Yeah, I didn't expect Eric to be so vicious. I'm sorry." After a moment of silence, she murmured painfully, "If I hadn't kept him hanging, he wouldn't hate you so much. Your danger was brought on by me." Saying this, she suddenly kneeled. "I'm sorry, Ben." I glanced outside the door, and without realizing it, rain had started, with Linda standing out there with an umbrella, waiting. "Tina, Linda's waiting for me. I'm off." I didn't look back and walked confidently into the rain. I hadn't been home long when Mike called to tell me Tina didn't follow the doctor's orders and went straight to the office. I chuckled. She's an adult. She'll be responsible for her actions. Mike didn't say more and hung up. Linda handed me a cup of ginger tea. "Drink this so you don't catch a cold." After finishing the tea, I pulled out an invitation to a workshop on Hodge conjecture and waved it at Linda. "Want to go?" Linda laughed. "Oh, I got an invitation too. Of course, let's go together." While Tina was busy fighting for her company, Linda and I were immersed in the world of mathematics. 2 years later, my contract with University A ended. Linda anxiously eyed me. "Would you stay for me?" I nodded I would. Linda and I didn't have some grand, epic romance. Everything was calm and steady, but she was truly perfect for me. The dark clouds from the past finally cleared. No one could hurt me by pointing out my flaws anymore. Tina's epilogue. The first time I saw Ben, he seemed like someone untouched by the world, with clear eyes and a pure gaze. Who wouldn't want to fall in love with such a pure man? I started to pursue him passionately. I could tell it was his first relationship. All his joy was written on his face. He wanted to talk about marriage with me, and after we got our marriage certificate, I let my guard down. Finally, I made a wrong choice at the wedding. I assumed someone with a soft heart like him would silently wait for me at home. When I returned, his attitude had changed. I didn't think much of it. I believed he'd obediently stay put. When he mentioned divorce, I thought he was just messing around. So, when I received Eric's call, I left Ben alone to deal with Eric. Eric wasn't lying. He had slipped in the shower, and when I got to his place, he was unable to move from the bathroom, his leg bruised. I helped him to bed, and he took the opportunity to hold me. I pushed him away, still rational. He looked at me. "Hurt. Tina, don't you love me anymore?" I scoffed. "When you broke up with me back then, that's when the love ended." Eric was heartbroken to tears. I came from a humble background. My dad a vegetable seller, my mom a homemaker. Everything I achieved was through grit and persistence. In the early days of starting my business, Eric couldn't handle the struggle of living in a basement, eating just steamed buns with pickles. After less than 3 months, he broke up with me. After hearing he'd been dumped by his rich girlfriend, my vanity got the best of me. I wanted to prove I was doing well, not just in business but with someone who loved me. Arrogantly, I brought him along on a business trip, and he, taking advantage while I was drunk, ended up in my bed. What shouldn't have happened, happened. I was terrified, and then I got a call from Jean about Ben being hospitalized. I only found out what he went through after I left. When I visited him, he didn't look well. I took Eric to apologize, but it seemed to backfire. I could feel Ben slipping away from me. After the divorce, the school admin told me about his brilliance, and it hit me how shallow and arrogant I had been all along. He had a hearing impairment, but he never felt inferior. He lived a bright and passionate life, while I tried to use it against him to weaken his confidence so he wouldn't leave me. Turns out I'm the fool. I gave Eric some money to leave me alone, but he wouldn't let go. He blamed Ben for my lack of return and secretly incited a mentally unstable PhD student to hurt Ben. Luckily, I saved him. He said the moment I walked back into the company after recovering, he would forgive me. The day I left the hospital, I rushed to the company as fast as I could after he left. Ben, have you forgiven me? When Eric was sentenced, I went to see him one last time. Ben and Linda were together and they matched well. Eric paused, then burst into mad laughter. Great, that's just great. If I'm not happy, neither should you be. I looked at him coldly. You're insane. Spend the rest of your life facing the consequences in prison. Eric was furious, his face twisting as he hurled insults at me. Later, I heard Ben had a daughter, and she looked like Linda. I guess she's probably a straight A student too.